is a joy to have Jon McGinnis with us today. He's back in the States without his family, just briefly, and will be headed back again early next week. But thought we'd take the opportunity to have him share with us not only what God is doing in Costa Rica, a good reminder to us on a holiday weekend that the world does not revolve around us as a country, that God is at work all over the globe, and also to open the Word of God and share with us. Most of you don't need any introduction to Jon. You've known him, well, I guess I've known him longer than you have, but he ministered here before heading out to Costa Rica on the mission field. We had the joy of ministering for a little bit of time together, but Jon served as our youth pastor, and then God called him to the field of Costa Rica, and we're going to be hearing about Costa Rica now, and we're going to hear about Costa Rica from Ryan and Gretchen next month. It is a place where God has especially put Berean stamp on ministry there. It's a place that's close to our heart and our heart's ministry. So, Jon, come and share with us. The Lord bless you as you do, brother. I'd shake your hand, but you're, well, there we go. Welcome.
Wow. It's just really weird being here. I'm seeing life from a different perspective right now because I'm not going to cry because I'm worshiping the songs. When your mind is cello because of language, to be able to see the words, no, it's awesome. All right, for those that have traveled with me to Costa Rica, mi nombre es Jon McGinnis. Hemos estado en Costa Rica por 2 años más o menos y queremos hablar un poco ahora. My name is Jon McGinnis, and we've lived in Costa Rica for almost 2 years. And I want to speak a little bit this morning about our family, about our life. Boy, language is a bear. Oh. Before I even get into everything, and I talk about it too, but I got to tell you, if I thought I knew any little bit of Spanish, I thought I had survivor Spanish walking into Costa Rica. I learned that I have nothing. Ryan told me all the tactical schools he ever went to, everything he did. Ryan's like the hardest thing he ever did was learn Spanish, was learn the language. He's been there for 6 years, and he said about year 4 he really feels comfortable. Well, we're at year 2, which means we're still very uncomfortable in it. We can understand it, we can talk, we can speak when we need to. We can make do just fine, but to actually think it, live it, breathe it, boy, it's still a challenge, and that's kind of where we're at right now. But we're glad to be there because at least we understand. Try going to church for a year and not knowing what's being said. That's the truth. With our kids, try having your kids and raise your kids in a way that they can grow up and love and have a passion for God. And we live online. People are critical about sermons online. You shouldn't be. It is what has sustained our family for the last 2 years when it comes to spiritual food. And it is a great thing for us. All right, I'm going to give a brief timeline. Here's our family when we left. On October 29th, about 21 months ago, more or less, we left. We had the opportunity to go into Costa Rica a couple weeks prior. I worked with a team, and we brought down, I think, 12 or 13 bags. And then on this trip, we had, I believe, 22 bags with us. Later to have a container come down with a car in it and some other stuff. And I'll tell you, adjusting at the very beginning was fun. Okay, it was a missions trip. We're down there, you see everybody. We've met a lot of friends. I had been down 10 different times, my wife and I had, prior to moving to Costa Rica. We had a lot of friends, a lot of Costa Ricans that were excited to see us. And we went to our house, which was just an awesome house until you lived in it for a while. But it was an awesome house. It was kind of like a trailer. It was a nice living room and a little kitchen off the side, and then it had a hallway and then bedroom. And then we actually had green space in our house. It was about maybe from here to that chair squared was our green space in back, which is a big yard for Costa Rica. And it was wonderful. After about 6 months, we realized that was a little close living together, and that kind of wore, and God opened up another home for us with a little bit more space, which is been an incredible blessing. But it was a great seeing teammates. Ryan and Gretchen were down there. At that time, it was just us, Ryan and Gretchen, and we jumped into ministry. Kids are doing great. I send their greetings. They are very upset that I came up here without them. Very upset. Johnny will actually be coming up probably in the next couple weeks as well. So I'm here, Johnny's here, and our kids won't be here. Again, they're very sad, but you want to give me $4,000, we'll fly them up. But it's been great. They're adjusting well. A little rough start at times, but God's been gracious, and I can say right now, 2 years into it, they are doing awesome. Katie and Megan are adjusting very well. We'll pray for them, mention them later, but continue to pray for their Spanish. It's a little bit harder for them. They anticipated to show up. Everybody says, oh, you're young, you'll learn it quick. They expected that quick to be about 1 or 2 months. So when reality sunk in, it was a rough go for a while there. They're getting it. I can talk to them in Spanish. They can reply to me in Spanish. They can carry conversations in our home in Spanish with Costa Ricans. But it's just there's a lot to it. So we praying for them as well. JD and Lindy are JD and Lindy. We can put them in a room with Costa Ricans, and whether it's English or Spanish, they'll be with them for 10 hours and make do just fine. In our timeline, after we moved in there, immediately after that was language. Kids started school. And on November 3rd, so just a few days after being there, we put our kids straight into school and kind of threw them right into it. And actually, it was a great thing for them. They were able to go to preschool. Boy, at that time, there's my laser pointer. JD and Lindy had JD went to preschool, which was total Spanish, no English at all. Lindy was half English Spanish. Katie and Megan had 2 hours of Spanish every day, plus their regular classes. And it was great. JD just wins every heart down there right now, still does. He's the same as he always been. He's pretty outgoing, doesn't know a stranger. Lindy's the same way, a little bit more timid now than what she was in the past, probably because of the culture, but is just doing great, and they jump right into things. Katie and Megan had some great friends in school, and it's been wonderful. But one of the adjustments that we had to go through emotionally was imagine with your parents, with your children, or even as friends, every 3 months losing your friends. Because this is a language school. The way it is it's built on a hill, and the top hill is the language school that we were all in. Then the next level was the high school, junior high, and the next level was the elementary. Every 3 trimesters, you cycle out, and missionaries go everywhere. In our class, we had maybe 100 in our graduating class for language school. Only 4 of us were staying in Costa Rica. People were going to Ecuador, Colombia, Peru, and a lot of other places. So imagine your kids making a great friend, and 3 months later they have to leave after making the transition to a new culture. And then 3 months later, those friends leave, and then 3 months later, more friends leave. And boy, it was 3 months, tears, 3 months, tears, 3 months. And that's an adjustment. And you learn to cope with that, and we live on Skype. Everybody says how great Skype is. We are literally on Skype every day to someone somewhere. So my name is Jonathan McGinnis. Ask to be my friend, and we'll Skype you. And it's odd for everyone who's not used to it. For us, it's just we do it every day. It's pretty common. After all of that, in November, we saw our methods of transportation, November, December. In the upper corner is my motorcycle, which I bought after about 3 weeks there, we got to have a method of transportation. And if you can imagine, for the first 2 months, that's all we had for our family. So we didn't go anywhere as a family. Johnny and I went around for a while, and if you could imagine Christmas shopping on a motorcycle, and yes, there was at one time Johnny was carrying 4 bags on the back of the motorcycle, and I'm trying to get her home, doing some Christmas shopping. That has been a real blessing, actually. Most missionaries, when they're in language school, don't have a vehicle. You're stuck with public transportation, which is not necessarily the safest methods of transportation. And it was a great blessing for us. By the end of December, through much fighting with customs, fighting through it. We did get our car, which JD's washing right there. And boy, that has been an incredible blessing. Our car it seats 7. We've had 12 in it. Many times we've had 12 in it, traveling to and from places. And it has just been a great blessing for us. Everybody asks, do you need to have 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive? I've driven through 2 rivers and 1 landslide. So yeah, it's been nice having the all-wheel drive and the ability to maneuver and manipulate through life. So that was the end of December. In January, I don't want to push too far here. Go ahead and move that next one. In January, we started language school. My wife and I did. So we had about 2 months there before our language school started, and that was a huge blessing. If anybody here is thinking about missions in the future, I will tell you, go to your country for a month or 2 before you start language school. I have so many friends that showed up 3 days before language school, and man, you're just barely getting into your home and figuring out where to shop, and now you got to go to language school, which, as Ryan said, for him was the case for us, was the hardest experience I think we've ever gone through, because you were just, school was hard and studying, but language school, your mind is jello, and you have to keep going through it, and you have to keep fighting through that language, and it was a challenge, but it was also a lot of fun. We met some great friends. We have great friends all over the world right now. Teammates from ABWE that we met down in language school, as well as a lot of other missions agencies that are all over the world. We have friends that are heading to Ecuador in another 3 weeks. We have friends in Colombia right now. We Skype. We talk to these people all the time. God is doing great things all over the world, not just in Costa Rica, but in all over, especially Latin America is what we're exposed to. God is doing great things. But during language school, we tried to surround ourselves with the opportunity to speak. So we would have, in addition to language school, we would have families into our home about 2 or 3 times a week, which is a little rough pace, but it kept us fighting through the language. And it was great to see Costa Ricans. We learned that language-wise, it just depends on who you talk to, whether or not you can understand them, whether they enunciate their words, whether they speak slowly, whether they speak really fast. It's very, very hard. And the only way to get better is to continue to expose yourself. So we were able to expose our kids to that, and we were able to as well. Tried some of the new cultures. Actually, that fish right there, I fried that. I make that myself now. It's a delicacy in Costa Rica, and I love it. And I learned how to fry that up pretty well. But we got some supporters and people that have been able to come down. I've been on a couple jungle treks through the jungles of Costa Rica. These are all opportunities that we have to really and truly just develop relationships and further our language ability. After language school has started, that consumed our life for a long time. In that process was residency. And residency not only consumed our life, but also our finances during that time. Imagine $2,500 per family member for residency. So we've got about $15,000 right now. But we have temporary residency in Costa Rica. And we did it in 7 months, which is the average is between 1 to 2 years. So it was a great blessing for us to be able to get residency. What does residency do? It keeps us from needing to leave the country every 90 days. So once you're in process, you don't have to do that. Once you get it, you don't have to leave the country anymore. So we had to leave the country one time to renew our passports, and that was it, at the tune of about $1,000 every time you leave the country. So you can imagine if you do this forever, it's going to be pretty expensive over time. And we have it now. It will turn over to permanent residency in the next 2 years, which means we won't have to renew it. Their idea of permanent residency isn't permanent. It just means it's a longer period. So we don't have to renew it for another, I believe, 5 or 7 years every time. In July, we received, I'm going to put a plug in here for Mark and Rhonda. And I'm not just saying this to boost Mark's ego. We received probably the greatest blessing we could have had during this whole process. And now, granted, we're dog lovers, so put that on the side. But Mark was able to bring down Vala to us. And Vala was trained, and we continue to work with her training. in some police work as well as just basic obedience. She is a really, really good dog. Let me tell you just a brief story. Our kids have adjusted well. Boy, there was a lot of those rocky emotional times where it is, and we still hit it. About every 3 months, you're good, you're homesick, you're good, and it's a little bit of a roller coaster. But then Vala shows up, and to have a dog there for us, it sounds kind of weird, but man, I'm telling you, it was so good to have that stability for my children and to have that protection for my children. Just the fact that, you have a dog that barks when someone's at the gate is great. I don't think I have any pictures of our homes. Every house in Costa Rica has bars on it. You never leave your children outside. Our kids can't just go to the park and play. We have to go with them. You can never leave them alone, ever, in the country. And it's a safe environment, but yet it's still a dangerous environment if you're not careful. So to have some protection there for our family, to have some security, someone for the kids to hug the dog is awesome. And I'll tell you, you really saw a change in our children once that dog came. So it's a great ministry that Mark does, Mark and Rhonda. It's a great ministry, and I appreciate it immensely. After that, I'm going to fast forward a little bit into December. We graduated, and we are just fluent in Spanish. By about day 3, we realized we're not going to be fluent when this is all over. Man, I'll tell you, you can see some pictures here. This was actually during language school. Johnny and I taught a 4-hour session in Spanish on finances while we were in language school. That is hard. It was really, really, really hard. And but you fight through it, and you get better, and you learn at it. And boy, the first time I gave my testimony, one of these times I'm giving my testimony here, that's actually the first time I gave my testimony in the bottom corner there without any notes in Spanish. And by God's grace, it went awesome. And I could have been done with missions forever at that point. I was on a high. I'm like, yes. And then the next time you give it, you're like, messed that one up a little bit. But we graduated from language school, which was awesome. Had some great friends in the upper corner there. Our class. Interesting thing about language school is you see the girl that's Korean right here in the middle. Her name is Cho. Cho doesn't speak English or Spanish or anything. She just speaks Korean. So, how does Cho learn Spanish when she doesn't speak English? And that's because they don't speak English in language school. You walk in there on day 1, buenos dias, mi nombre es blah, 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 in Spanish. And so how do you learn a foreign language when they never speak English ever? I don't know, but we did. And by 3rd try, we could actually talk to Cho, which is awesome, because we all knew enough Spanish that we could actually communicate with each other and share a little bit about our ministries and feelings. But it was great, a great experience. Glad we did it, and we're so glad it's over. After that, talk a little bit about the kids. Then in the spring of this past year, we decided to make a decision with our family to homeschool our kids. And some of that was a financial decision, some of that was education decision, kind of a combination of everything brought it all together. And we just weren't, it just seemed it was the best idea at the time, and we are more and more convinced in that. Tell you a little bit about a blessing that God has given us. In the United States here, if you want to homeschool or anything, you run to the bookstore. You grab some books. You have resources readily available. You're right here. When you're in a foreign culture, that's not right there. I can run to a bookstore, but everything's in Spanish, and in Costa Rica, they don't homeschool. So there's no curriculum type stuff at all. So we're looking online, and we budgeted for it, and we're figuring out how to do this. God brought a family, which my wife actually spent with the day with them yesterday, but brought a family into our lives in language school who has homeschool curriculum, the same curriculum that we were using from kindergarten through 9th grade. And they have it there in Costa Rica with them. And they have no kids that are that age. They've all outgrown it now. So we were given about $4,000 worth of curriculum for free for this coming year. That's a huge, obviously, savings, headache, because then you got to bring $4,000 worth of curriculum down to Costa Rica. You can't ship things down there. Everybody keeps asking us, well, can we mail you a package? You could. We had a friend mail us some craft supplies, about $15 of clearance Hobby Lobby craft supplies. It cost her $40 to ship them down to Costa Rica and $50 for me to get it out of customs. So $90 to get $15 of craft supplies. So we just tell everybody, don't send anything. It's going to cost us more probably to get it. But man, God, I tell you, God has just opened doors for us, for our children, for homeschooling. We are starting them with Spanish tutors in September. So in the fall, when they get back at school, they will have a private tutor, which will hopefully help their Spanish to explode and to grow. Think of a couple more stories before I jump in a little bit further. We have experienced, we have had the opportunity to experience a couple of earthquakes. That's also, it's very exciting to go through, especially for your first couple times. I was at the Atlanta airport just a couple days ago, and I'm sitting on in the chair, and all of a sudden this is kind of like shook a little bit, and I thought, oh, it's an earthquake. Well, okay, then it's not an earthquake in Atlanta. We're not having an earthquake. In Costa Rica, they happen daily. We have 3 or 4 a day. You don't feel any of them usually. But there was the one time that we had a 7.2. It was about 50 or 60 miles away from us was the epicenter. We were on the on the second floor at our language school, and it was actually kind of interesting. I know this is having issues, so I won't try to. I'll be gentle, but it's like all of a sudden it just kind of does this, and the next thing you know, it's like everything around you is shaking, and it is a little bit terrifying for your first time to go through. Everybody's running outside, and you got to go outside, but eventually you do get used to those things, and you walk your kids through. Hey, but we don't have to deal with tornadoes. We don't have to deal with all these other things that we have here in the States. We have basically volcanoes and earthquakes. It's not real comforting to my kids either, but we do try. We do have volcanoes, and they are erupting right now, actually. We have one that's erupting, but where we live, it's far enough away that it's not an issue. But it's an adjustment, I'll tell you. It is definitely an adjustment. So what do we do? That's a great question. I'm a checklist person, and we call them WAR reports, our weekly activity reports. And we do this within Tactica just to help each other know what's going on and to help us kind of track out what our week is going to look like. And I'll sit down on Sunday afternoon and I'll make up my weekly activity report for the whole week. And it is filled with about 40 or 50 tasks, just little things. To change my oil in our car takes about anywhere between 2 to 6 hours. Because last time I took my oil, it took almost a day. I dropped my car off to the gas station guy, which, again, working in Spanish, trying to figure out how to do this. He takes off my filter, takes out the plug, drains the oil out, and then realizes he does not have another filter for my car. So he gets on his motorcycle and starts driving around everywhere in Costa Rica to find it. 2 hours later, he comes back with it. Oh, I'm sorry, did you need your car today? That's what yeah, that's right, I'll wait. So, things like that just takes forever. You go to the hardware store, you want to make a little project around the house, you see a sheet of plywood, you need to get it cut. Well, you need to go find the plywood, get the number written down, you need to go take that back to the people and then pay for it. Then you need to take it back over here and have them mark it where you need it cut and signed. Take that sheet over here to have it signed. Then they cut it. Then you take it all the way back to the very beginning and get your stamps, your receipts stamped. Then you got to pull your car around, show them the receipts, and then you can pick it up and leave. If they don't question why in the world you have 2 pieces of wood when you only paid for 1. And that happened with Rick. Rick was fought for almost an hour with the people. You only paid for 1 piece of wood. He's like, yes, and we cut it in half. Now it's 2. So it's culture. We get used to it. So what do? We do Bible studies right now. You've heard a lot about our Bible studies. Our Bible studies, you can see in the upper left-hand corner, that actually was children's ministries at Courtney's house. Courtney is actually the 2 on the side there. Courtney is one of our teammates. a single girl that is working with the children's ministries. And for a while there, Bible studies were at Ryan and Gretchen's house. The children met at Courtney's house, which is 1 block away. Our Bible studies average between 40 and 140, depending on who shows up at what month and what's going on, what the schedules are for the police officers. In the bottom middle, let's go upper right hand, is Ryan and Gretchen's backyard, which is a great place. They actually have the biggest yard that I ever even seen in Costa Rica, which is about that size. And they put a lot of people in there, which is great, except for right now, which is the rainy season, and it rains every day, anywhere between 2 hours to the entire day, every day. So you don't do much Bible studies outside. In the bottom middle there is actually our house. I told you before, God blessed us with a house. We had friends that were ABW missionaries to Nicaragua. They had lunch in this house. There was another person. And they said, you know what, they're leaving at the end of this trimester. You might want to call them. They said, I think their house is pretty big. So I knocked on the door and said, you don't know me, but I think I want your house. Can I go take a look at it? Which is how it works with this. And they're like, oh, yeah, come on in. So we went in and we looked around, and the price that we had budgeted for, it was actually under that budget, so it was well within our budget. It was just a little bit more than what we were paying, and it's literally about 6 times the size of what we were living in. And, I could be, secretive and like, oh, well, God gave us a nice, humble home. No, it's a big house. And I'm saying that because we had 140 people in that house for Bible studies last month. I wrote my prayer letter, but I actually thought, how many people can we put in the second floor before it collapses? We had 75 people in that room, bottom middle there. 75 people were all crammed in here on the second floor. And then we had another 40 plus down in the lower area and then all around. The following month, this past month, we had 40 show up. So I was talking with Bill about the summer and the holiday months. We understand. We had 140 and 40 within a month. It just fluctuates. Everybody says they're coming. Well, how do you prepare food for that? You freeze a lot, because you do. My wife has so many meals in the freezer that we just pull out, and as we need it, we thaw them out, we cook them. But we feed them during that time. We do a Bible study. We've done book studies, like through books like Crazy Love and a whole bunch of other books that they have translated into Spanish, as well as we do the more discipleship studies as well. And it's a great blessing. With that comes a great challenge. And the challenge is obviously the space. So you've heard a little bit about God's blessing with our ministry center. And we have a ministry center now that we have rented, and it is about a half a mile from my house and a half a mile from Ryan's house south. And it is a great blessing. It is a big warehouse, and in front of the warehouse is a 2-story with an apartment on the second floor. Offices will be on the first floor. On the back of the ministry center, we're building a bunkhouse for teams that come down that will house at least 20, plus have 3 couples bedrooms where it's like individual units there. And Ryan's brother Rick and his wife Sherry are down there right now for the 2-year stint. And Rick has built and flipped a lot of houses in his life, 60, 70 of them. He's overseeing this construction, which is a challenge in Spanish as well. But the apartment is almost done. The bodega, or the warehouse, is being worked on right now. The second story will be done in 21 days. We were debating on how we're going to do this, how we're going to pay for it. And you might have heard that story. We were raising some funds and trying to get some ideas and really just getting to the line of, are we going to have it or not? And then an anonymous donor gave us $100,000. And in 2 months, a month and a half, God raised up $145,000 for this ministry center. And when you're like, oh, is this what God wants us to do? It's pretty obvious that that's what God wants us to do. And it was just a real blessing. We'll continue to be so. We will still do Bible studies in our homes. Probably what we will be doing is more the smaller Bible studies in our homes, and then meet once a month for a large Bible study at the ministry center. Other things we do, tactical courses. We this past January, we were able to do a canine course, a search and rescue course. In February, we did a riot control course because we had the Central American Games in Costa Rica this past year. And we wanted to get the police ready for that, so we hosted 140 officers in a riot control course. And you ask, well, John, how is it that you can teach tactical courses? And the answer is very carefully. Some of them we can, and some of them we can't teach. I've got some other certifications over the past couple years, and I can teach in executive protection and some stuff like that. But I know nothing about search and rescue. But we know people who do. And the way Tactica works is we bring Christian officers from the States down to Costa Rica, and we host these courses. So I don't have to know a tactical skill. We just have instructors from the States who do, and they come down and teach it. Every one of those officers that come down are believers, are sold-out followers of Christ. They use that we use these tactical courses as a platform to share the gospel, to enter into the lives of these police officers who receive no training, no skills help at all, to enter into their lives, to show them that we care about them, that we actually care about their personal and physical safety. And in turn, because this is a culture that does not trust or love the police, when we show them that we love them, they're wide open for the gospel. And in January, I'll talk a little bit more about this in just a minute. In January, we saw 15 people come to Christ, 15 officers that we've been working through the discipleship process. In February, we had 23 officers come to Christ. Time and time again, God continues to bless this method of using a platform, entering into their lives, showing them that we love them, that we care about them, and in turn, men and women and families being changed with the gospel. We usually do about 3 or 4 tactical courses a year, and the rest of the ministry is the follow-up discipleship side of it. An interesting area of ministry for my family, for my wife and I, has been the pastoral counseling side, the biblical support type side. I've had great conversations about Roman Catholicism, Mariology, and the worship of Mary, and working through Scripture. What does Scripture say about Mary, who she is? What does Scripture say about Roman Catholicism in general? We've had a lot of great conversations about divorce and infidelity within the Costa Rican culture, especially the police culture in Costa Rica. The infidelity rate is astronomically high, and almost everyone that comes to Christ has been divorced, remarried, or never married at all and been living with 2, 3, 4, have kids here and just a lot of baggage. And it's been very interesting counseling through those times and working through those. And that's an area of prayer that we would have, because every scenario is different and every scenario is messy. And just pray for wisdom with us, with Ryan and Gretchen, as we counsel through these issues that these people face. One brief story, a couple that came to Christ when we first showed up, named Jother and Joanna. We love them. They're great people and just awesome. And they actually helped us label our whole house. Everything in our house we labeled in Spanish. And they came over and helped us when we had just first arrived. Boy, when Costa Ricans come up to you, new believers, and they say, "Could you explain to my wife what biblical submission is?" I was like 3 months into language school. I mean, I have a hard time explaining all that in English, let alone in Spanish. And we're like, and it was hard. But we fought through it, and that's a great, these are topics that come up just daily. I was discipling a guy, and he said, "You know what? I never knew that to look at a girl in a wrong manner was sin." He's like, I never ever knew that was sin. And to see that light turn on as you're discipling, God say, "Wait a minute, what about this? What about this?" It's been awesome. Discipleship, follow-up. Here is from our January course. Here's some of the people that received Christ as their Savior. And Oldemar is up here in the corner, and Oldemar is with the Red Cross. I meet with Oldemar about once a week right now. He made a decision to follow Christ. We meet with he and his wife, and is growing is loving God more and more. Bottom corner is a friend of mine named Frank, and Frank's a rough guy. But boy, he struggles. But he loves God. And I believe that God made a change in his life. And he's a prime example of just because you made a decision doesn't mean your problems are going to go away. And we continue to work and counsel and work with he and his wife. Bottom corner are two firemen, firemen. And they are Bernie and Luis, and they meet with my teammate Mike Armstrong and are continuing to grow in their walk. And God is using Mike to disciple those guys. Upper corner is a friend of mine named Carlos. Carlos came to Christ in January's course, and his life changed 180 degrees. He is in our ministry, our personal family ministry. He is our poster child. God just grabbed a hold of him, flipped him around, and has changed his life. Now, he still has a lot of stuff going on in his life, but he is sensitive to the gospel, sensitive to what God has for him to do, to live, and it's been incredible to see him grow. Here's some pictures of the family. Everybody asked about the kids. They are growing up. JD is 6, JD's 6, Lindy's 7, Megan is 12, and Katie is now 13. And they are growing and love them dearly. And they're excited to come back and see you guys. I want to share just briefly here from Matthew. If you could turn to Matthew 13. And I got about 5 minutes, more or less, which is great. That's plenty of time. Plenty of time. Matthew 13, 1 through 9. It's the parable of the seeds. I'm going to roll my sleeve up so I can actually see my watch too. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea, and great crowds gathered around him, and so that he got into the boat and sat down. And the whole crowd stood on the beach, and he told them many things in parables, saying, a sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some of the seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and then immediately they sprang up, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched. And since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell in good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. Jump on down to 18. I'll let God explain this. Hear then the parable of the sower. Anyone who hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. This is what has been sown along the path. As for what is sown on the rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no roots in himself, but endures for a while, and when tribulation or persecution arises on the account of the word, immediately he falls away. As for what is sown on the thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. As for what is sown in good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it, and indeed bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, another 60-fold, and another 30-fold. I want to talk a little bit about 4 seeds. Only one of them, maybe a bold statement, I don't know. Only one of them is a true follower of Christ. And we see it pretty clearly here in Scripture. Only one of them, the one that produces fruit, the one that is growing and is fruitful, is the follower of Christ in this parable. Now, the problem that we have is there's a debate about that. Some people say, well, no. I mean, your second one, they hear it, they received it. That's the problem. The point, I'm just going to jump right to the meaning here. The point of this passage is those that follow Christ we'll grow. We'll be fruitful, and we'll produce fruit. Okay? So there's your big idea meaning right now. That's kind of the application in it all. Seed number 1, the first seed fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured it. That is our life. Should be our life. I share the gospel. You share the gospel. People hear it. They say yes or no. They walk away. That's the seed. I'm just throwing seed out there, and if they receive it, they receive it. If they don't, they don't. Those that don't, this is that first person. I'm just sharing the gospel. They hear it. Okay, that sounds good, and they move on. No real reason. They just don't have no reason to receive that. The second seed fell on rocky soil. They heard it and accepted it with joy. This is one of the trickier ones, I think. But had no depth, no roots. And when the problems came up, they withered away. They departed. In America, we, and I can say we because, well, 2 years ago I was here and I've been where you guys are sitting. We do a horrible job of discipleship in general. I look at my life and I think, who discipled me? I had a lot of mentors in my life, but someone who actually sat down and discipled me, I don't know that I really had any or many people do that in my life. Now, some people are very fortunate, and they have had that. It's so important that when we receive the Word of God, and we make a step to say, okay, you know what, this is making sense. I think I'm going to receive this gift. To continue to have someone in your life to teach you, to help you, to grow you. Many times it's a pastor, a teacher, an Awana leader. But there are those people who have that gift of discipleship. Find those people and hold on to them and hug them and learn and grow. And that is the meat and potatoes of our ministry down in Costa Rica right now. Because we see how easy it is to receive something like, oh, this is a great idea. And then the problems hit. And you realize that your life doesn't change. The problems are still there. Your heart changes. Your perspective may change, but the problems are still there. And someone who is rooted well, someone who is discipled and growing, they will thrive through that time. I'll get back to that in a second. The third seed fell in the thorns, and he was choked out by the things of this world. I could tell you story after story. I won't, because of time, of people who have shared the gospel. They said, yes, I understand it, I get it, but I like my sin. One individual actually said that literally, but I like my sin. The things of the world creep up, and it's so easy for us to want to go to church, to go through the motions, to play church, and yet be so consumed with the items, the stuff of the world, that there's no time for God, that there's no time for spiritual growth in my life because I have all these other priorities, all these other things that I have to do. The fourth one, seed that lands on good soil, it hears, understands, bears fruit in its life. The example of that is going to be, for my picture up there, was Carlos. A little bit of his story. He's an opera singer, okay, which is pretty atypical in Costa Rica, but he's actually a world-renowned opera singer, one of Costa Rica's best opera singers at one time, and was living in Germany and met a girl, and it was his wife, because they use that word very loosely in Costa Rica, and he has a kid in Germany. Had to leave Germany because of some issues that they were having there within their family setting. Moved back to Costa Rica, has another wife here in Costa Rica, and has a child there. Now he's a believer. Has a wonderful girlfriend who's a believer. She's great for him. They're growing. But he has all these issues. And he comes over and he's asking me advice and counseling. And I kept saying, Carlos, it's consequences of sin. But God is faithful. God will help you work through these things. And we talked a little bit more in depth about the more specifics of these issues. But Carlos, God is faithful. He will help you through this. He will show you what to do. He will. And we read and we prayed, and he walks away saying, man, thank you so much. It's so good to know that God's word shows me what I need to do. In the midst of all these problems, and he's got some problems, God is faithful. And a believer, someone who receives that gift, who grows in his walk, is going to, in the midst of these problems and circumstances, still continue to grow. Flip over real quick, and I'm going to close here. In Luke 14. It's important for us to see those 4 seeds, because I want us to realize a follower of Christ produces fruit. A follower of Christ produces fruit. People who go through the motions don't. People who hear the word, born and raised in the church, but have never had that transformation in their life, they don't produce that fruit. Luke 14, 22 through 33. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Okay, I wish I had like 4 hours on that one. Cannot be my disciple. Who doesn't bear his own cross and follow after me cannot be my disciple. Underline it, highlight it, study it later. Cannot be my disciple. For which of you desires to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether it is enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid down the foundation, is not able to finish it. All who see it begin to mock, saying, this man began to build a tower, was not able to finish. Or what king goes out to encounter another king in war, will not sit down first and deliberate whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000, and if not, while the other thing is yet still great way off, he sends a delegation and asks the terms of peace. So, verse 34 or 33, therefore, any one of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. Underline it, highlight it, mark it, star it. Cannot be my disciple. All right, here's my quick little challenge, and then we'll give you a free prayer request, and I'm done. Are you ready to renounce everything for Christ? Pretty easy. Are you ready to renounce everything to follow Christ? Your family, friends, job, comfort, security, popularity, your time, finances, your life in some countries. God's standard for a follower of Christ, our standard is right here. God's standard is so much more. And we cheapen that. We all do that. We all like, well, you know, he's a good person though. I mean, he's a believer, but cannot be my disciple. Those are scary words. Those are scary words. And I ask myself, and we all need to ask ourselves, am I a follower of Christ? Am I a disciple? Am I someone who has landed on the good ground, who is hungry for Christ to grow and to mature and to produce fruit? I want to leave you with 5 prayer requests before I turn it over to Pastor Bill. Number 1, please pray for our team in Costa Rica. Right now, our team is Ryan and Gretchen Rott, Rick and Sherry Rott, Mike and Arlene Armstrong, Courtney Eaton, and then our family. We went from the Rotts to the McGinnises and the Rotts to now we have 5 family units within our team. And that's great. It's a blessing. Obviously, when you go from 1 to 5 in a short period of time, there's growth that's going to have to happen during that process as well. Please pray for unity. Please pray that we will continue to be united, strong, passionate about serving God. Number 2, pray for the couples that we disciple. There is no couple that we disciple that has an easy story. That's proper English, I'm not sure. Every couple that we work with is messy. Every one. Pray for wisdom, discernment as we go through those issues with these people. And I can't even express how hard that is at times. Pray for the Ministry Center project. God continues to bless that. We need that property. We need it to be completed. And just pray that that will continue to go well. Number 4, continue to pray for our Spanish. That will continue to develop and grow over time. Not only our Spanish, but also my children. The more my children learn, the easier life will become for them as missionary kids. So just pray that they would grasp that. Finally, pray for our centurions and our churches that we partner with. Centurions are our national leaders, those nationals, Costa Ricans that we team up with in positions of leadership. Pray for them as well as the churches that we partner with, which is about 8 churches throughout Costa Rica. And pray that we continue to develop those relationships and grow. Thank you guys for the opportunity to be here, to speak. I cannot express to you how much Berean means to my family. And I'm not just saying that. I really, really mean it. We love you guys so much. We have a very atypical relationship with our church from what I found with most missionaries. We love you guys. All of your idiosyncrasies and church stuff, we love it. We miss you guys. There's not a time that goes by that we think, man, it'd be great just to fly home for a week or two, which I get to, which is nice.